I know somebody was supposed to be in charge of time, but I'm glad they didn't enforce that. I think that alone was worth the price of admission, right? Thank you, Dr. Phillips. I mean, I'm sure, every time I listen to you, I would say that your administration has a level of maturity that I have not seen in recent times. And thank you for coming. Yes. I should have actually prefaced his remarks by saying he was leaving, but I was hoping he would stay a little longer for Q&A, but just had to leave. So lastly to the podium, but by no means least, we're going to have a presentation by Res Burchenson. A key aspect on the path to financial and economic independence is planning for retirement. Some of us look to our children as our pension plans, while others cannot envision ourselves getting old and therefore try to ignore the inevitable. Many of us fail to recognize the folly of not having a retirement plan, which is the key to our survival when we are no longer earning a steady income. As Richard mentioned earlier, the elderly population with no retirement plan in place may become a burden on the state or other family members. So the question is, should pension plans be mandatory? To speak on the issue, please join me in welcoming one of the Gleaners 50, under 50, rising stars in 2012, and that's not the singing one, that's not Digicel, this is the business one, rising stars in business. And managing director of Prime Asset Management, or pension funds management subsidiary, Res Burchenson. Res.
Good afternoon, members. I was going to say Dr. Phillips, but he has left us. Mrs. Williams, the heads of the PIOJ, I think the chair of the FSC is also here, heads of the PSOJ and the JCC, chairman of VMBS, president and CEO of VMBS, directors and executives of VMBS, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I would like to turn the attention on an area of the economy where vast amounts of the population are not experiencing financial independence. And as the chairman just said, and also said by the president, the reason for highlighting this topic is to ensure that we prevent further burden on the fiscal in future years. So, you can go to my left or your right. So what do these statistics have in common? 60%, 25 years. They point to a looming crisis facing Jamaica. On one hand, there's a fast aging population, mostly without a pension plan, while on the other, older persons are living up to 25 years after retirement. 60% of persons have no pension and have never contributed to NIS, according to a 2012 survey from UWI, which backs up a 1995 survey from PIOJ. This 60% includes large number of persons in the private sector, 18% of whom are not contributing to pension arrangement. Based on the 2011 population census, older persons are living up to 20 to 25 years beyond the retirement age of 60 for women, 65 for men. That was then. I think it's been gradually increased for women. The 60 and over age group has increased by 9% during the period 2001 to 2011. And the size of the above 80 age subgroup increased by 34%. In 2012, close to 350,000 persons, aged 45 to 59, were projected to retire within 15 years. And I can bet you that a high percentage of these persons have no pension plan to receive when they retire. Many, unfortunately, will not be able to retire. Ladies and gentlemen, if you think I'm speaking about some alien cohort, unfortunately, this subgroup are likely to be our brothers, our sisters, our spouse, our parents, and our kids. The aging of the Jamaican population raises economic questions, especially about how older persons will finance longer lives, stated by Dr. Shearer, who is the director of the Aging and Wellness Center, in a Sunday Observer report in June 2015. She urged that pension reform must address issues such as compulsory pension portability and indexation. There are 3 points to note from this quote. The first is financing retirement. The second is not running out of money during retirement. And the third is being saved from the impact of inflation during the golden years. In search of a long-term and suitable solution to the looming crisis of no pension arrangement for the majority of the Jamaican working population, let's take a look at the Chilean experience and what obtains in other Latin American countries. That reform initiative took place in 1981. So I would assume that many persons in this room have heard about the Chilean experience. They undertook a major reform initiative in 1981, primarily because they recognized, much like what we now recognize with our NIS, that the model that they had at the time can't work. So if you read the slides, you'll understand, it actually reads much like the NIS problem: unfair distribution of income across groups, political interference, high inflation, poor investment of funds. So what they did, continue, Clover. So obviously the long-term sustainability of their pension plan was in doubt, and also there's a low coverage ratio. They took a number of initiatives. They increased the retirement age, but primarily what they did in summary was that they made pensions mandatory for most of the population. This is a slide that I want to kind of share with the members. It shows the impact on GDP between 1980 and 2001 on an annual basis, and that is 0.5%. So earlier Professor Williams spoke about GDP in Jamaica being between 1 but less than 2%. I think we certainly welcome an additional 0.5% to our statistics. And what this model is showing, or the outcome from the reform in Chile, was that there are a number of positives that certainly will impact the economy from our reform in the pension space. The savings rate increase, there's an increase in employment, an increase in productivity, and also an increase in financial sector development. But Chile wasn't the only country in Latin America that did a reform of their pension system. 8 others continued initiative since 1981. The thing to note was that, however, that they all did it a bit differently. And the key point that I'd like to highlight is that there's no one way to solve the challenge of the looming financial crisis. I'm just highlighting one initiative that extensive data exists, and to show the positives that arose from that reform. But there are a number of things, a number of options that can be put on the table. So as you can see, some of the countries: Mexico, Bolivia, Colombia, Peru, Uruguay, Argentina. And these countries, some of them had GDP per capita larger than Jamaica, but some of them also had GDP per capita similar statistics such as Jamaica. So certainly this is what we all want to see. Charts going north. It shows the impact in terms of stock market capitalization for Chile, Colombia, Peru, and Mexico. Much to what the minister just said before. Certainly if we're in an environment where the stock market was very robust, it would certainly assist the government of the day in terms of their privatization initiatives. Some other considerations is that, firstly, what could be done is a reform of the NIS, But one thing that you will know is that the NIS actually does provide a high replacement ratio for those at low income levels. How will you have mandatory pension in an economy where there's a large underground economy? What percentage contribution should we start with? Should it be 5? Should it be 10? Should it be phased? The challenge that will exist for persons' disposable income, and we all know that the economic situation is very challenging. We certainly require the need and support of key stakeholders, the unions, the private sector, the government, and the issue of trust. Should it be centralized or decentralized? Should it be run by the government or should it be run by the private sector? And I kind of stuck sub-bullet in to say that certainly there's capacity in the private sector to assist the government or to assist society in solving this challenge. So what we have, members, is that we have, in a number of years, close to 500,000 persons retiring. Many will not have a pension plan. The looming crisis requires what I believe urgent attention. This is just one approach. And certainly my job today is not to prescribe what should be adopted, but let us start the conversation. Earlier I spoke about the study done by Dr. Shearer. There was a paper also done by Damon Crawford. There was a paper also done by Constance Hall. But I do believe that it is time to start. We can't wait until 15, 20 years out when there's an immediate challenge to the fiscal. I mean, certainly some of the reform initiatives that we're taking, that we are currently undergoing, is to ensure that 15, 20 years out, that our fiscal is in good stead. So I think that my short presentation is for us to start the conversation. And on that note, Chairman, I'd like to end my presentation. Thank you, members.